let us bring in one of the superstars of the MMA, UFC fighting world, who's getting ready for a huge bout on Saturday night. Pearl Gonzalez is also a big-time Chicago Bears fan, and she joined us now on CHGO Bears. Pearl, thank you so much for making time for us. We appreciate it.
What's up, gentlemen? Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Pearl, before we get to the Bears, you don't look like someone who's ready for a fight on Saturday night. You look like you're more going to go out on Saturday night. How did you get the mentality to be able to do this thing? And by the way, tell us about who you're taking on Saturday.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm fighting for Game Bred Boxing 4, which is Jorge Masvidal's new boxing promotions. And it's a huge card. We've got Roy Jones Jr., Anthony Pettis is the main event. Pretty amazing main event. We've got Jacare Souza versus Vitor Belfort, who are some MMA legends. And then we have Jose Aldo versus Jeremy Stevens, which it has fireworks like written all over it. I mean, both of them have fought before. Jeremy comes to knock people out. Jose Aldo is one of the greatest strikers of all time. So it's a banger, that one. And right before all that fun action goes, I come on and I'm fighting against Gina Mazany. Gina is a former UFC fighter as well. She's actually fought for 2 divisions for the UFC at 135 and 125. So it's a great matchup for me. I'm very, very excited to go out there and try to knock her ass out. I hope I can swear. Sorry.
You absolutely can. And you mentioned Masvidal. Braggs, you should get into this because he fought Nate Diaz for the baddest motherfucker belt, and he won that thing. He knocked him out in like 3 seconds. So I mean, these are some you could have been in there, Braggs. Like I'm a lover, not a fighter, Pearl, but Braggs over there, he's more of the fighting type.
I can't say I'm not stepping in the ring with any of these dudes, and I'm not stepping in the ring with you either, Pearl. I know my place here. All right, so all respect to you. So Mark told me you're a huge Bears fan. Like, you grew up around here, I take it. So maybe tell your story a little bit about your passion for this team.
Oh my goodness. So obviously born and raised in Chicago. I absolutely love and support everything sports Chicago. I've always been a tomboy. I've always been into sports. And so, I grew up watching football. My family are diehard Bears fans. So we'd watch, that was something that we did. My uncle actually has a condo right by the Soldier Field. So we got to like watch the game, see all the fun shindigs that were going on. I mean, it was like a real 5-minute walk to go to the field and watch and see the pre-gaming and stuff and tailgating. So I have really fond memories of Sundays being fun here in Chicago. I miss it. I'm in California now. I live in San Diego. That's where I train full time. And the football teams, are just in other cities are not like ours.
No, the vibe is definitely different in Chicago. Well, we do tailgates, before every home game. So maybe if the stars align, the schedules line up, maybe we'll have you come by our tailgate if you're ever in town for one.
And we were supposed to have Pearl in studio today too, but since there's a little construction issue, although Nick is sitting there right now, which is
you could have sat with Nick because Nick didn't know.
I had my boxing gloves too. I wanted to get some advice and just some things, but go ahead, Mark.
Oh, no, man, I would have loved to.
Yeah, well, and I just want to follow up on the uncle in the South Loop because that's where I live, and right across the street from me is this thing called Soldier Field, and I don't know how you feel about this, Pearl, but I'm sitting there like, Bears in Chicago, baby. Let's fight this to the death and not go out to Arlington Heights. I don't know how you're feeling about it, your uncle, all that.
I don't understand. Like, who wants to go to Arlington Heights? That's like, like the people that say they're from Chicago, but they're really from Arlington Heights. That kind of like gives me that vibe. And Chicago is such a gorgeous city. It's such a beautiful place. Like, to me, you have to have the team in Chicago. It brings in tourists. It brings in people into these small businesses and gets that Chicago spirit out to the rest of the world. So I agree. I think it should stay in Soldier Field or stay in Chicago. At least build a new stadium in Chicago if you need a new stadium.
Bullseye insight, by the way. I love everything that's coming out of your mouth right now, Pro. Those are beautiful words. I hope people are listening. Hey, it says Showtime Pettis is a beast. That's a loaded car with some veteran names. Maybe you can show Showtime some love.
Yes, he's huge. I mean, he's a Milwaukee. He's from Milwaukee, so he's very close to home. He's got actually several businesses out there. He's very involved, has a gym, does a lot of things with the youth in Milwaukee. And I actually had the opportunity a couple weeks ago to go to his gym. He's at Capatillo Gym in Las Vegas, and I went out there for a sparring session in Vegas about 2 weeks ago. So I got to be there and see him while he was in and out. He was on his way to go spar Caleb Plant. That's who he was using to get ready for his fight with Roy. And man, he's in incredible shape right now. That morning I came in, he had just ran like 12 or 15 miles and then was on his way to spar. I mean, he's taking this very seriously. He wants to show out. He has an opportunity. Roy is one of the boxing GOATs. And so I think that this is a huge statement that he can put on for his boxing debut.
Pearl, I mean, 12 to 15 miles, that sounds insane. But I just started getting into kickboxing. What's some advice for someone who's just starting to get into it that you would give to a beginner like myself? Like, I'm just learning some of the basic combos and things like that. Any advice you can give?
Yeah, there's several. One thing is stick to your basics. I train basics every single day. You can never go wrong. Just like with any sport, your balance, your structure, those are key to developing power. And that's the key, right? Is to learn how to strike with power, learn how to strike with accuracy. And so I would say always stick to your basics, never pull away from those. Have as much fun as you can, and shadow box, look in the mirror and watch yourself. That is my biggest tool to my technique and to my form, is watching myself and making sure that structure, that balance, I'm turning my hand over, I'm bringing it back to my face, I'm twerking my hips, and all those little movements, those little fundamentals that are vital to really learning how to land good strikes.
For sure. And real quickly, Pearl, how long does it take to prepare for a fight? Like for the one you're going to have this weekend, when did you start and how does that process even work for you?
I kind of stay in the gym all year around. I try not to leave fight camp. I try not to stay away from the gym. Obviously, life happens, situations happen where I have to pull away from training. But I try not to stay too far away. And so I really don't I try to stay ready rather than get ready. But typically you have a fight camp for about 8 to 6, anywhere from 6 to 10 weeks, depending on how big the fight is. I think for boxing, it's a little different. It's not as intricate as an MMA fight. You're not grappling, you're not wrestling, you're not putting these pieces together. And so I think boxing, a typical camp is about 6 weeks long.
So
go ahead,
Brex.
When you talk about technique, I'm curious if any athletes from the city or, where you're at from outside of your sport come to train with you guys just to try to pick up different technique that might help them in their sports.
Yeah, there's a lot of football players that have been getting into mixed martial arts. One that I know personally, he's a great friend. I mean, we know through social media, is Mercedes Lewis. He's with the Packers, one of you guys' friends. But,
nobody's perfect.
He's actually been training mixed martial arts for about 10 years. And he's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. He's done all kinds of striking. I mean, we've seen several fighters come over, even into the UFC, that have made their way over there. Eric Anders was a football player. Greg Hardy, he was a pro football player as well. There is a dude that I actually just commentated on. He made his debut for Jorge Masvidal's Icon, which is our mixed martial arts show. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he plays for the XFL, which is the Rocks League, I think. And so he plays for them. And man, he was an incredible athlete. And he's like, I got to switch right now. I'm focusing on my football season. I don't train MMA when I'm doing this. I'm all in on my season. But as soon as this is over, this is what I come back to. And so I think more and more, especially today, the sport has evolved so much. 10, 20 years ago, the sport had martial artists, right? You had your kung fu guy, your karate guy, your wrestler, your jiu-jitsu guy, and you had each of those in their specialty competing against each other in mixed martial arts. Today, these are real athletes. These are athletes that have been training their entire life. And so with that, you have a lot of these athletes making the crossover. And when you have these skills, these natural talents, or these talents that have been built up, the strength, like I said, the conditioning, the posture, the understanding and awareness of your center of gravity, and you understand how to move your body, just like a football player, you can really transfer into something, transition into something like MMA pretty easily. I actually think that the football tackle is much more similar to MMA takedowns than wrestling. Now, wrestling, yes, you need all the skills in wrestling for MMA to take people down and work against the fence, etc. But when you actually take someone down in MMA, you're moving, they're striking, much like a football tackle. You're never really stationary right in front of each other like a traditional wrestler. And so I've always thought of that, as well as the footwork. I mean, your footwork in football translates so well into boxing and kickboxing and striking.
Braggs, you want to play your video of your offensive line nonsense and see what
this draft guy that's coming out for Ohio State, an offensive lineman. He did this little skill drill at pro day where he's backing up and staying in his stance, and he's making these loud noises and then runs through it after he's done. So I reenacted it, and it looked ridiculous, as you might assume, but it was funny. We had some fun with it. So yeah, I'm working on it. I'm going to get in shape, and then maybe, because me and Carm have developed somewhat of a rivalry here, maybe you can help get me and Carm in the ring one day. We'll get the headgear on and everything, and you can be the official or the ref, and we'll go to work.
No, we won't.
Yeah, it would be so much fun. It really is. If you ever punch someone, you ever punch the shit out of someone, it's the best feeling in the world. And sometimes getting hit actually feels pretty good too. It sounds kind of crazy, but like you really do let off so much energy and steam in sparring and in punching the bag and stuff. So I think it's a great idea.
Well, if me and Carm do it, it'd be a lot like when Michael Scott and Dwight Schrute squared off in The Office.
I mean, it'd be some. It would be some. That would turn into some life or death stuff, which is a little terrifying. But maybe we'll have to do that. How did you get into it back in the day, Pearl? I know you're my new best friend today, so I know a little bit of your background. That your dad kind of got you going that way. I think you were aggressive as a kid.
Oh my goodness, I was always fighting in the streets. I was always fighting, and so he needed something from me. My dad actually raised me as a single father, and he was just trying to figure it out. Poor guy. He was really didn't know what to do with a daughter, but he was trying to figure it out. I moved with him at 9 years old, and that was when he kind of took over and raised me from then on. But he needed something for me, and I was always fighting in the streets. He worked at Firestone. He was a hard worker, working 60 to 80 hours a week, and I had a lot of free time on my hands. So he needed something for me, not only to discipline me, to teach me, discipline and stuff, but he needed a place for me to kind of go after school. And I was a tomboy. I remember in my earliest days, like he would take me to the YMCA. That was kind of what we did together. And I would play basketball with him. I'd lift weights with him. I was always just doing active sports. I used to play this football game called Pickle, and I somehow got the nickname as a kid, Pickle, because I loved this game. You'd throw the ball back and forth, and you had to run, and it was the best game ever. But my nickname actually was Pickle, so I was always into sports. And he found a gym for me. And I just remember sitting there looking at the coach, Master Bob Shermer. And he's like, I'm going to whip her ass into shape. I'll have her doing sit-ups. And I'm like, who is this guy? Who does this guy think he is? A couple weeks later, I was doing hundreds and hundreds of push-ups. And I learned really fast that he was right.
That's awesome.
And you're going to like the answer to this question, Braggs. I got a little inside information. But back then when you were doing all that, who was your favorite Bears player?
Oh my goodness! Well, that was actually not when that was my favorite player. A little bit later on, though. This is the time when my uncle had his condo. We were watching the game. That was kind of our Sunday thing to do here. But Devin Hester, man, he's the GOAT. He's like the GOAT.
Let's go.
And I just remember how excited we were for him. And I had his jersey, I remember the city was so excited for him. We did really well while he was playing with us. We almost made it. But he was my favorite. He's my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, for our generation, I was 2 months old when the Bears won the Super Bowl. So for a lot of us, that moment, even though they lost when Devin Hester returned the opening kickoff, and I think all Bears fans can appreciate, that was if you just want to take a single moment and not the game itself, that was one of the greatest moments in NFL history. When they tell the story of the National Football League, it's the highlight montage will have Devin Hester returning that kick in it. So an epic moment there. So it's really interesting because with your background and how you came up in fighting, I certainly was a scrapper growing up. I was in a lot of fights. I won some and I lost some. And, even I work construction, and you'll see guys duke it out on the construction side. I mean, you just do. It's the nature of the business. And we go back to work the next day, and that's just how it is. So I'm curious from your perspective. Everybody talks about when they win a fight, but losing a fight, whether growing up or in the ring, how important was that for you to like mold who you are today?
Oh my God, it's such a huge part of my character development, right? Is one, accepting failure, but overcoming failure, picking yourself back up. And in my sport, you have some of the best and greatest moments in your life. You're in this crowd and you have this big victorious moment, and et cetera, et cetera. But then you have one of the most heartbreaking. You can have some of the most heartbreaking moments where like you just got your ass beat and like the whole world is just coming down on you and they're making fun of you and there's memes, and it's so hard because it doesn't show what it took to get in there, right? Yes, I fought and I had a shitty performance for this 15 minutes or so, but you didn't see what it took for me to get to this point in the hours of work that were put in prior to. And so for me, I think at first it was detrimental when I would lose. It was heartbreaking. I never wanted to do it again. I was so embarrassed. And then it got to the point where it was, I cannot allow for this bad moment, this bad performance, because that's what it is, to go past all of the progress. There was still so much progress made in the fight camp, so much progress made as an athlete. And so you have to, like, Kobe would talk about that. You have to have amnesia. And the same thing with the fight game. You have to have amnesia. Anybody, especially when it comes to mixed martial arts, anybody on any given night can win. We just saw that. We just saw this with the champions. Look how many champions were turned over this year. Valentina Shevchenko just lost her belt. She threw a spinning back kick, and no one knew that Alexa Grasso was going to jump on her back and choke her out like she did. She's one of the greatest female combat athletes of all time. She will go down right now as the very best. And it's something so small, a spinning back kick, that just took her reign. And so that you can't take away from all of the progress and the things in the history that she's made. One bad performance does not define your character, does not define your progress, does not define who you are. And I think for me, that was such a huge part of my character development, because we want everything now, right? We want to be a world champion today. We want this now. And you are not ready sometimes to accept that you failed, that you were not good enough tonight. And so it teaches discipline, it teaches perseverance, it teaches overcoming, but it also teaches patience, right? Patience in becoming, space and becoming. And I think that for me, I have learned so much more in my athletic career and as in my character from losses than I would ever from any win.
Yeah, I'm sure it's hard with social media. I didn't have to go to social media when Big Red whooped my ass in 5th grade. So
hey, Saturday night, Fiserv Forum. I'm not sure what order you're going to be out there, but you'll be there. If you're not going up, you can watch it on UFC Fight Pass pay-per-view. It's $49.99. Roy Jones, Anthony Pettis, everybody we're mentioning, but of course Pearl Gonzalez, Gina Mazany. Am I pronouncing that right, Pearl?
Yeah, Gina Mazany. And actually, I have a funny story about losing, so it's really, really quick, guys. I know you guys gotta go, but so I had this big professional jiu-jitsu fight right before I moved into boxing and transitioned over to bare knuckle boxing is what I had went into. But I had this big, huge match in professional jiu-jitsu, and I lost, and I was devastated, right? And I call my best friend, who is the promoter for Game Bread. He's the matchmaker. Dean Toole is his name. And I call him, and I'm just like, I just want to crawl in a hole, and I'm crying my eyes out. It's New Year's Eve, mind you, and we're home. And he was like, do something fun. He's like, I don't know. You got to turn it around. All of the media right now is on her. Take her height. And he was like, he sends me a picture of this dude, head to toe covered in fruit roll-ups. And I was like, got it. So I made a bikini out of fruit roll-ups and did this badass at-home photo shoot. And it got like 27,000 likes. It was all over media sites. It was fucking awesome. So I took that loss and I turned it into something positive and funny and utilized that momentum and just a little bit more insight. Be on the lookout for my press conference, which is tomorrow, because fruit roll-ups might be.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
All right.
Real quickly, Pearl, before we have you go, I just want to know, what's it like being in the Octagon? Like, what is that like? Like, for people who will never be there or have experienced that, what is that like when everyone's fixated on you, the lights are on you, you're about to go fight? can you compare it to anything? But what is that like?
It is the scariest yet most sacred place in the world in my life that I've ever been. And even in the ring, it's different than the octagon. In the ring in boxing, you feel the energy. You can feel the momentum of the shouts and the people raving. You can feel it, literally feel it. But then you have the hot lights, the bright lights that are on you. You have usually a camera somewhere in your face. You have the energy from your team, the energy from your opponent and their team, the energy from the crowd. It's just like this huge, crazy, sacred moment, but it feels like a car accident. And you know that moment right before you get into a car accident, you either freeze or you move and you move the car or something, you act. That is what you're going through over and over and over again. Wow. You have these moments where you're like, what do I do? What do I do? And so you just have to constantly stay on your game, constantly stick to what you're supposed to do. And that's my best way. You can hear the crowd. You can hear her corner. You hear your corner. You hear the referee. You hear certain things. You might even see things. Some athletes see better than they hear sometimes. You can smell. You can smell the blood. You can smell the sweat. You can smell. So you like all your senses are intact, and then you feel on top of that. So it's pretty incredible.
Wow,
that's nuts.
That was an incredible. I think we all got at least some level of feeling of the insanity of what you do.
Badass.
Which, by the way, you're. I don't know how long you're planning on doing this, Pearl, but when you're done, your ability to talk about it is extreme. So maybe someday at good old CHGO, we'll start the UFC channel. I'd like to formally, not way over my pay grade, to do this, but I'd like to offer you a job as our official UFC talker who can also speak on Bears, and I'm sure there's other sports you can do too. So it was super awesome to have you on today. Great stuff. And go take Gina down. Is it
I'm knocking her ass out.
Do you hate her, or is it just business? Is it both?
It has absolutely nothing to do with her. I think that she's an incredible athlete. I have so much respect for her. But when she steps inside the ring, it becomes a personal thing, and it's just her and I in that ring on Saturday night. And I'm going to step toe to toe with her. I'm going to get right in her face. I don't plan on taking one step backwards. I'm going to get right in her face, and we're going to find out who hits harder, and we're going to find out who's the last woman standing.
Let's go.
Yeah, I'm hyped.
Pearl, thanks. Appreciate it. Well, let's do this again, okay?
Yes. Have a great one. Thank you.